Minerville and Florida State just keep stacking them up in the transfer portal, adding two more highly coveted prospects this week in wide receiver Malik Benson from Alabama and defensive lineman Tomiwa Durojaiye from West Virginia, adding more depth at key positions and looking to reload a very solid roster for the 2024 football season. So let's talk about Malik Benson. Transfer wide receiver from Alabama. He played in all 13 games this season, although he didn't necessarily light it up in the stat department, totaling 13 catches for 162 yards and one touchdown. But he was the number one JUCO prospect last portal cycle, coming from Hutchinson Community College there in Kansas. He was teammates with defensive end Jaden Jones, who Florida State also has on the roster, so that likely played a role here in landing him as well. He only visited Florida and Florida State. It definitely seems like he at least had a decent idea that he wanted to play at one of those schools. The Gators even felt like they had some confidence to land him just a few days ago, so always nice to beat out an in-state rival for an elite transfer prospect like Benson. I think the thing that sticks out the most and what really caught the staff's eye here is his speed. He's 6'1", 190 pounds, so he's not the typical big body receiver we're kind of used to seeing at Florida State lately, but he is incredibly fast. This is another guy who was a track star in high school. He ran a 10.4 100-meter, which is phenomenal. I'd say he's even a tad faster than Pokey Wilson, if you guys remember. And honestly, if you look back at the offense in 2023, I actually feel like Pokey's speedster role was missed, and maybe missed even a little more than I expected. Obviously, Keon and Johnny were among the top receivers in college football, but they weren't burners by any means. Their skill set was to win one-on-one matchups where they were great at. But you did miss the speed role at the receiver position, and I think that's what Benson brings in and adds back to this offense. And I think it just adds to the common theme that you see here with the guys that Florida State has taken through the portal this cycle. There's not a bunch of big guys, but they're absolutely bringing in speed with the other guys we've covered, Jalen Brown, Jalen Lucas, and now Malik Benson. That's three guys that bring in elite speed. Again, two of them track stars in high school, so you've obviously also brought in DJU, who has an absolute cannon of an arm and likes to throw downfield. So I think you're seeing a very strategic portal class here, trying to surround the new quarterback with elite talent and speed that also plays to his strengths. But absolutely solid pickup here, hopefully getting back that Pokey Wilson kind of role and winning a head-to-head against the Gators to do so. This is also the second Alabama transfer that Florida State has gotten this cycle. The Noles have already added defensive back Earl Little, and I wouldn't even say that they're done yet. Florida State is also expected to host Alabama running back Roy Dell Williams this weekend, and they've actually got a lot of optimism there. Florida State has also gotten a visit from Bama O-line transfer Terrence Ferguson, so keep an eye out for the Noles to add a couple more Bama players here in the near future. Now moving on to the second commitment of the week, I hope I'm saying this correctly, Tomiwa Durojaiye. You started to see posts swirling on Tuesday night about him being listed on Florida State's roster before an actual announcement was made. And I'm not going to lie, I started kind of worrying about another Emeritus Mims type situation, but luckily he came out. The official announcement came soon after, and this is a massive pickup for Florida State here. He comes in at 6'4", 280 pounds. A lot of the player comparison I'm seeing for him, not only because of size, but also style of play, I'm seeing a lot of Keir Thomas comparisons. He's a bit bigger than like a Jermaine Johnson type, and I think could complement a guy like Pat Payton very well. Having that mix of length and speed from Payton, and then pairing that on the other side with some size and power with Durojaiye, you can see that they're trying to build a well-rounded defensive line that can attack an offense in many different ways. Now, I also think he can play defensive end or shift inside and play defensive tackle. So, another very versatile player Florida State's bringing in here. He was another highly coveted guy out of the portal. Miami wanted him. He even took a visit to Auburn before getting down to Tallahassee. So, excellent job from the staff here, closing and landing elite talent. On top of his size and what we've seen out of him so far in his first season, my favorite thing about him is that he has 3 years of eligibility left. And this is not to discredit high school recruiting by any means, but we all know that Florida State has struggled to bring in talent along the defensive line from the high school ranks in recent years. And yes, you can get a portal guy for a year, but you don't want to always be having to rebuild your trenches each offseason. So bringing in a guy like him who could be here for 3 years is huge and kind of helps pick up the slack from high school recruiting. So Florida State adds Tomiwa into the fold. They've also brought in another edge rusher, Marvin Jones Jr. from Georgia. And I'd be willing to bet that they bring in at least one more edge guy and probably another true defensive tackle as well. I know they feel like they're in a good spot with Zion Young, a 6'6" defensive end from Michigan State, as well as Sion Loloea from Oregon State, who was also teammates with DJU in 2023. So you can possibly see one of those guys also jump into the boat for 2024 here very soon. Florida State has had an absolutely awesome last few days here in the transfer portal, adding in 6 new commitments in the last 4 days. They've absolutely surged in the rankings, coming from 90 up to number 5 nationally. So Mike is absolutely cooking in the portal, and we love to see it. And again, I don't think Florida State's even close to done yet this time around. And then there's a whole other portal window that opens up in May. And I think that's when you'll see them attack a few other positions. I know a lot of people have questions and concerns about linebacker, and I understand that completely. I do as well. But honestly, there's not many great options out there at the linebacker position right now. But there will definitely be some more options there in May. So far from done here in the portal, but I'm already really, really liking the way this class is shaping up for Florida State. We got news breaking left and right, and it's almost hard to keep up with. But that's exactly why you guys want to make sure you're subscribed to the channel, keep up with all the big news for Florida State, whether it be transfer portal guys, recruiting, conference realignment. You want to be in the loop. Plus, it helps me out a ton. So definitely drop a like and subscribe. And I'm sure we'll be back real soon with some more good news. Go Noles.